Welcome to the first episode of Gaming History 101. I'm Professor Crapgamer. Today I'll kick off the first episode with one of my favorite developers, Rare. As we all know, Rare is currently working on Sea of Thieves for the Xbox One, but they have such a storied and interesting history that I thought it'd make a great first show, so hopefully you guys all enjoy it. A lot of people, probably ill-informed people, say things like, quote-unquote, old Rare is dead. And this is most likely an attempt to discredit them since they were bought by Microsoft back in 2002. Microsoft and the Xbox brand is and has always had its fair share of haters, or people that think of them as the quote-unquote evil empire of gaming. But truth be told, Rare has a long history, and when you say old Rare is dead, which old Rare are you referring to exactly? Rare has been through several employee shakeups, well before Microsoft bought them out. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Founded in 1985 by the Stamper brothers, Tim and Chris, Rare actually found a way to bypass the NES production key that developers needed at that time to create games for their consoles. Impressed with this, Nintendo offered them a huge budget to create games for the platform, and although Rare is usually thought of as a developer of high-quality titles, early on they did a lot of what we call shovelware today. Double Dare, Wheel of Fortune, Anticipation, John Elway Quarterback, California Games, Hollywood Squares, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and even Jeopardy Jr. Yes, they made Jeopardy Jr. Rare still made their fair share of great games during this time though as well, RC Pro-Am, Wizards and Warriors, and of course, Battletoads. Rare made a ton of money off Battletoads actually, and decided to buy an SGI system to work on state-of-the-art 3D rendering and graphics. Now using these SGI systems, they created this boxing game demo and showed it off to Nintendo. The Super Nintendo at the time couldn't render all of the SGI graphics at once, so Rare used the SGI graphics to produce 3D models and graphics before pre-rendering these graphics onto the cartridge of a Super Nintendo system, and this process became known as advanced computer modeling. Nintendo was impressed with the process and they actually bought a 25% stake in Rare, and that stake gradually increased over time to 49%. Rare used this process to create Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo, which still looks great even today thanks to their breakthrough in technology. Now during this time, quite a few Rare employees left the company due to heavy work conditions, and Rare had to restaff. In fact, the Stamper brothers were well known to kind of be ball busters and force people to work even half days on Christmas, and it could be very demanding, and so this caused a lot of people to be unhappy. But Rare did restaff and they grew to over 250 people as a whole. This allowed Rare to split into different teams and work on multiple games at the same time. The Rare A team went off to work on a new 3D platformer for the Nintendo 64 that would end up being Banjo-Kazooie. But development fell behind and Banjo was delayed. The smaller team, a team of actually only 10 people, and only one of those people actually had any kind of experience making a game, they were tasked with making Goldeneye 007 for the Nintendo 64, which turned out to be a huge smash hit for them. Rare had a plethora of hits around this time, from Donkey Kong Country and the sequels to Killer Instinct Gold and then Goldeneye. Now after the success of Goldeneye, Rare was going to make a James Bond tie-in for the movie Tomorrow Never Dies, but Rare was actually outbid by another publisher for the rights to the game, and so Rare decided to turn that into Perfect Dark instead. While the team worked on Perfect Dark, Rare's other teams finished up Donkey Kong 64 and Jet Force Gemini. They also had released Diddy Kong Racing. After the completion of Diddy Kong Racing, another team was working on a new game known as Dinosaur Planet for the Nintendo 64. However, Shigeru Miyamoto, the Nintendo executive and game creator, demanded that the team recreate the game as a Star Fox title for Nintendo's new console, the GameCube. Now, unlike the other Star Fox games, Starfox Adventures focus on a ground-based open-world exploration, and the game was well received by critics at its launch in 2002. Now, Starfox Adventures turned out to be the only game developed by Rare for the GameCube, as they had a racing game that never completed. Now, Tim and Chris Stamper said they were surprised that Nintendo didn't actually acquire the studio, so Rare was actually looking for potential buyers at this time because the cost of game development had rose quite high. In early 2000, Activision and Microsoft began visiting Rare and making purchase offers, and Rare was very interested in Activision's offer, but the deal fell through, and on September 24, 2002, Microsoft purchased Rare for a whopping $375 million. Character trademarks from games developed by Rare for Nintendo consoles like Conker from Conker's Bad Fur Day or Banjo from Banjo-Kazooie were retained by Rare, but IP created by Nintendo like Donkey Kong or Star Fox were retained by Nintendo. And there was another mass exodus of Rare employees that left during this buyout, so Rare was forced to restaff yet again. Once again, I'll say, old Rare is dead. Who? Because they had multiple exoduses where people left well before Microsoft even bought them out. In 2003, Rare released their first Microsoft game, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, a game that really completely flopped and underperformed, but has since garnered a cult following. And now Rare was a big part of the Xbox 360 launch, releasing cameo elements of Power and Perfect Dark Zero at launch. Later they released Viva Pinata as well as Viva Pinata 2, Trouble in Paradise. Fast forward to 2007, Rare's founder, the Stamper Brothers, departed Microsoft to pursue other projects, and it was actually Rare's idea at that time to create the Xbox Live Avatar system. And although Nintendo's Mii's came out first, Xbox Avatars were actually in production well before the Mii's were even thought about. Even though the core group that created Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the Xbox 360 were the same core group that created the original Banjo game, Nuts and Bolts was criticized by the critics and fans of the series, and a lot of people used this to attack them, saying the quote-unquote Rare is dead and things like that, even though it was largely the same group of people that developed the original game. Rare then switched its focus to the Kinect, making Kinect Sports 1 and 2. Both games combined to sell more than 8 million copies and proved to be a huge success. Kinect Sports rivals on the Xbox One failed to garner the same level of success, and Rare suffered some layoffs after this. But with a renewed focus and a 30th anniversary, Rare released Rare Replay, the most pre-ordered game from E3 that year, and they also showed off Sea of Thieves, the first new Rare non-Kinect IP in almost a decade. Rare has had its ups and downs, but to count them out would be a mistake. To consider quote-unquote Rare, old Rare to be dead or an actual thing would also be a mistake. Much like Santa Claus is more of a feeling, Rare is quality and fun personified. Who knows what Rare has in store in the future, but I know I'm always excited to see their logo on any game, and I'm never one of those people that counts them out or thinks that they're dead or they can't make a comeback or that they can't make great games. Rare makes great games, and they'll continue to do that, and I'm very excited for Sea of Thieves. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and hopefully it was a little bit enlightening. Let me know what you think. Sound off in the comment section. I appreciate it. Rack 'em up. Crapgamer out.